Hey guys. Tonight we're not easing into a palace or sinking into silk cushions. We're standing at the edge of a road that looks romantic only because you're not actually on it yet. You're here with a pack that feels reasonable, clothes that seem practical, and a confidence that has not yet been properly punished by history. In front of you stretches the Silk Road, that legendary network of trade routes people love to summarize with words like exchange, culture, and adventure. What they forget to mention is that you are wildly underprepared. You definitely think you'd survive this. You wouldn't. Not emotionally. Not physically. And absolutely not with that attitude. You'd last maybe 2 weeks. And that's being generous and assuming nothing interesting happens. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is there. Because somewhere in the world it's midnight, and someone is already regretting their life choices along with you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin, as most people on the Silk Road did, with optimism that borders on arrogance. Your bags are full, but not in the way they should be. You've packed things that make sense in a city, extra fabric, personal items, maybe something sentimental you absolutely won't need and will definitely resent carrying later. Historically, merchants setting out along the Silk Road often underestimated the length and brutality of the journey. Assuming trade hubs would appear as conveniently as rest stops. They didn't, and even when they did, they charged you for the privilege of being exhausted in their vicinity. There's a popular historical image of caravans setting off in orderly lines. Camels calm, merchants confident. That did happen, sometimes. What's less discussed is how often departures were delayed by arguments, missing animals, or sudden changes in leadership. You stand there now, waiting for someone else to decide when you leave. Already learning lesson number 1. This road does not care about your schedule. Some historians still debate whether delays were more dangerous than rushing ahead. But either way, you're losing time, supplies, and patience before you've even walked anywhere. You join the caravan because going alone would be suicidal. And everyone knows it. The group is a collection of strangers with incompatible goals. Some want profit, some want survival, a few are fleeing something they don't talk about. You exchange polite nods, already calculating who looks useful and who looks like they'll slow you down. This is not friendship. This is mutual dependency under stress, which is much less forgiving. Your first steps onto the route feel underwhelming. No dramatic music. No sweeping vista, just dust, animal smells, and the realization that walking all day is very different from walking for fun. You adjust your pack for the third time in 10 minutes. It still doesn't sit right. That sensation in your shoulders? That's the beginning of a long-term relationship with discomfort. There's a well-known historical fact that silk, spices, and precious goods moved along this route for centuries, shaping entire empires. What's less well known is how many people never made it far enough to trade anything at all. Illness, injury, and exhaustion eliminated travelers early. The Silk Road wasn't a single road, it was a shifting maze of paths. And choosing the wrong one could quietly end your story. You try not to think about that as you follow footsteps that may or may not belong to someone who knew what they were doing. By midday, the sun introduces itself properly. Heat presses down on you with the kind of confidence only nature has. Your water supplies suddenly look smaller. You sip when you promised yourself you wouldn't. Everyone does this. Every generation repeats the same mistake and then writes very convincing advice about not repeating it. Some historians still debate how travelers rationed water effectively without modern containers. Judging by the survival rates, effectively is doing a lot of work in that sentence. As the caravan moves, you learn the sound of camels shifting weight, the rhythm of walking you didn't choose but must now match. Your feet hurt in ways you didn't know feet could hurt. Someone jokes about it. It's not that funny, but you laugh anyway because laughing is cheaper than despair. That's your first light survival joke of the night. There will be more. You will need them. Toward evening, the landscape hasn't changed much. But you have. You're quieter, more attentive, less sure. Dinner is simple, bland, and eaten with the kind of focus usually reserved for important meetings. Food here isn't pleasure, it's maintenance. There's an odd historical detail that surprises many people. Travelers often ate the same monotonous meals for weeks because variety increased risk. Your stomach will complain anyway, like it thinks it has better ideas. When night finally arrives, it doesn't bring comfort, it brings cold, unfamiliar sounds, and the realization that you're sleeping on the ground with people you met hours ago. You arrange your belongings close, not because it helps much, but because it makes you feel like you're doing something. The stars overhead are incredible. This is the moment people romanticize later. You enjoy it briefly, then shiver and pull your clothes tighter. As you lie there, listening to the caravan settle, one thought becomes clear and quietly terrifying. This is the easy part. You haven't crossed a desert. You haven't faced bandits, disease, or politics. You've just started walking. The Silk Road stretches ahead, patient and indifferent. And tomorrow, it will start asking for things you didn't know you could lose. You learn very quickly that joining a caravan does not mean belonging to one. Morning breaks with coughing, muttered curses, and the unmistakable smell of animals that have no interest in your comfort. Someone is already arguing about pace. Someone else is arguing about direction. You're still trying to convince your legs to cooperate. This is what passes for unity on the Silk Road, agreement to move forward at roughly the same time. Historically, caravans were essential for survival along the Silk Road. Lone travelers were easy targets for bandits, illness, and geography itself. What's often glossed over is how unstable these groups were. Members joined and left constantly. Sometimes voluntarily, sometimes not. You look around and realize you don't actually know who's in charge. That's not reassuring. Some historians still debate whether caravans were more effective as cooperative units or merely clusters of people hoping danger would choose someone else first. As you walk, you start noticing how little trust exists here. Everyone watches everyone else's packs. Not openly, nothing so rude, but with careful peripheral vision. Theft isn't common, you're told. That's comforting in the way statistics are comforting when you're personally at risk. You adjust the straps on your bag again, wondering how noticeable it would be if something went missing. The answer is very. Conversation is sparse but strategic. People exchange information the way gamblers exchange tells. Where did you come from? How far are you going? What are you carrying? You answer vaguely, which is the correct response. Oversharing here isn't friendly, it's reckless. There's a light joke about modern icebreakers being easier. At least now you don't have to explain your hobbies. Just your value. By midday, the caravan settles into an uneasy rhythm. Camels plod forward, unimpressed by your ambitions. You learn that the slowest animal sets the pace, not the most motivated human. This is a well-documented reality of Silk Road travel, though it's rarely phrased that bluntly. Your steps sync with the sway of the animals. And for a while, your thoughts quiet. This is not peace, it's adaptation. There's a strange, lesser-known fact you overhear during a brief stop. Some caravans intentionally included inexperienced travelers. Not out of kindness, but because desperation makes people compliant. You process this while chewing something dry and vaguely edible. It's unsettling, but also practical in a way that makes too much sense. Some historians still debate how often exploitation shaped caravan dynamics. Judging by the looks exchanged around you. Often enough. The afternoon brings fatigue that feels different from yesterday's. Deeper, less dramatic. Your shoulders ache constantly now. Like they're keeping score. Someone cracks a joke about how walking builds character. You suspect character is just what people call exhaustion once it's socially acceptable. As evening approaches, a minor disagreement flares up, nothing violent. Just sharp words over where to camp. It resolves quickly, but the tension lingers. You realize how thin the line is between cooperation and conflict when everyone is hungry, tired, and dependent on each other. The Silk Road doesn't need villains. It just needs time. You lie down that night closer to others than you'd prefer. Farther from safety than you'd like. The caravan breathes around you, animals shifting. People murmuring, someone coughing in the dark. You tell yourself this is better than being alone. You're probably right. Sleep comes slowly, and as it does, you understand lesson 2. Surviving the Silk Road isn't about strength or courage. It's about tolerating people under pressure. Tomorrow, that tolerance will be tested properly. By the third stretch of walking, you stop thinking of the animals as companions and start recognizing them as management. The camels decide when you stop, how fast you move, and how miserable you're allowed to be. They kneel when they feel like it, groan like the world personally offended them, and stand back up only after you've questioned every decision that led you here. You begin to understand why ancient travelers respected camels with the same wary acceptance modern people reserve for malfunctioning technology. Historically, camels were the backbone of Silk Road trade, perfectly adapted for long distances. Extreme temperatures, and minimal water. What's less often mentioned is that they are also stubborn, moody, and completely uninterested in your plans. You tug a rope, the camel ignores you. Someone with more experience gives the rope a different tug, and suddenly the camel complies. This is not strength. This is knowing which arguments are worth having. Some historians still debate whether camels were trained more through technique or through resigned mutual hatred. Watching this interaction, you suspect the answer is yes. As the day progresses, you learn that falling out of rhythm with the animals is a fast track to exhaustion. Walk too fast and you'll regret it by noon. Walk too slow and you'll get shouted at by someone whose patience evaporated 2 hours ago. You adjust, again, Adaptation is becoming a recurring theme. You joke about it, but you're saving energy for breathing. There's a brief stop near midday, and you take the opportunity to stretch muscles you didn't know existed. Someone nearby mutters that a camel bit him last year. Not aggressively, just emotionally. You laugh. Because it sounds ridiculous and because laughter is cheaper than asking follow-up questions. This is your second light survival joke. You're getting good at these. A lesser-known historical fact floats through the group during the break. Camels could remember mistreatment for years. Years. You glance at the nearest one, who stares back with the expression of something that absolutely would remember. You make a mental note to be polite. Extremely polite. Modern customer service has nothing on this level of long-term accountability. By afternoon, the heat intensifies, and the caravan tightens formation. This isn't scenic wandering anymore, it's controlled movement. Dust coats your mouth. You drink less than you want to and more than you should. The balance is never right. Some historians still debate how ancient travelers managed hydration so effectively. Your current theory is that effectively means most of them didn't. As the sun dips, the camels slow on their own, as if following a schedule older than everyone present. Camp forms quickly, efficiently, without much discussion. You realize this is the result of habit, not harmony. People know their roles because learning them the hard way is expensive. That night, lying near the animals, you hear them breathing, deep, steady, unimpressed. You envy that. You're sore, dusty, and quietly impressed by how little the Silk Road has asked of you so far. You know that won't last. As sleep creeps in, one thought settles comfortably, like a warning wrapped in acceptance. If the camels ever decide they've had enough of you, this journey ends immediately. Tomorrow, the road stops pretending to be manageable. The desert doesn't announce itself with drama. It just removes things. Shade disappears first, then moisture. Then the comforting illusion that help is nearby. You wake to a horizon that looks the same in every direction. Which is impressive until you realize it means you can't tell if you're making progress or just rearranging your suffering. This is the first proper desert crossing. A classic Silk Road milestone. Historically, routes like the Taklamakan and Gobi were infamous not because travelers didn't know they were dangerous, but because knowing didn't help much. You can prepare, plan, and still be undone by heat that doesn't care about experience. Some historians still debate which desert claimed more lives. The deserts themselves have never felt the need to clarify. By mid-morning, the sun is no longer warm. It's invasive. It presses down on your head and shoulders like a physical object. Your clothes trap heat. Your skin burns through fabric anyway. You adjust your head covering for the 5th time, convinced this angle will finally fix everything. It doesn't. The desert accepts your effort and ignores it completely. Walking becomes mechanical. Step, breathe, don't think too hard about water. You fail at that last one almost immediately. Every sip feels like a moral decision. Drink now and regret it later. Or wait and regret it sooner. Ancient travelers were famously strict about rationing. But strictness doesn't make thirst quieter. Some historians still debate whether travelers underestimated water needs or simply had no better options. You suspect the answer is both. Repeatedly. There's a moment when someone stumbles ahead of you. Nothing dramatic, Just a misstep. Two people grab them before they fall. No commentary follows. Help here is fast and silent. That's efficiency, not kindness. You file that away while your legs remind you they exist. A strange, lesser-known fact about desert travel surfaces during a short stop. Sound carries differently in heat. Voices distort. Distances lie. You think you hear water once and feel foolish for hoping. Mirage stories weren't exaggerations. They were misunderstandings fueled by desperation. You blink hard, focus on the ground, and keep moving. By afternoon, humor returns in short, dry bursts. Someone jokes that this is great for skin detox. Another suggests the desert is an excellent minimalist retreat. You laugh more than the jokes deserve because humor burns calories you don't want to spare. But despair burns more. This is your third light survival joke. You're officially developing a coping style. As the sun finally lowers, relief arrives late and incomplete. The heat loosens its grip but doesn't let go. Camp is made quickly. No one lingers standing. Sitting feels like luxury. Lying down feels suspicious, like something you haven't earned yet. That night, the desert cools rapidly, almost spitefully. You shiver under the same stars that baked you hours earlier. This temperature swing was a known hazard on Silk Road routes, though it's rarely mentioned in romantic retellings. Some historians still debate how travelers adjusted clothing effectively without modern gear. Judging by your teeth chattering, not easily. As you curl into yourself, one truth settles in gently but firmly: the desert didn't try to kill you today. It just introduced itself. Tomorrow, it expects more from you. By morning, your water supply feels like a personal insult. The container isn't empty, which somehow makes it worse. You can see the water. You just can't afford to enjoy it. The desert has taught you a new math, one where thirst grows faster than logic. You take a measured sip and immediately resent yourself for it. This is the point on the Silk Road where water stops being a resource and becomes a personality trait. Historically, wells, springs, and oases determined routes more than cities ever did. Entire caravans lived or died by maps that marked water sources with hopeful confidence and occasional lies. You're moving toward one now. Allegedly. Some historians still debate how accurate these water maps were. But everyone agrees on one thing: trusting them blindly was a gamble you couldn't refuse. As the sun climbs, conversation dries up along with everything else. People stop joking. Even the camels seem quieter. Conserving energy with professional focus. You start noticing how often your tongue sticks to the roof of your mouth. It's distracting. You think about modern advice: stay hydrated, listen to your body, and almost laugh. Your body is screaming. You are ignoring it on purpose. There's a brief argument ahead when someone suggests adjusting the pace to save water. Someone else points out that walking slower means more exposure. Both are right. Neither wins. The caravan keeps moving at the same punishing speed because indecision here is more dangerous than a bad decision. This is a well-known historical reality. Caravans often chose consistency over optimization. Some historians still debate whether this saved lives or just simplified blame. By midday, someone's water skin leaks. It's not dramatic. There's no cinematic collapse. Just a quiet, dawning horror as damp fabric darkens and then dries again far too quickly. No one says anything. Help wouldn't change the outcome much. And acknowledging it would spread panic. You look away, which feels terrible and practical at the same time. A lesser-known fact about Silk Road travel surfaces here. People sometimes drank animal blood in emergencies to survive dehydration. Not as a ritual, as a last option. You process this information slowly. File it under facts I hope remain theoretical. And take another careful sip of water. It tastes faintly of leather and anxiety. As the afternoon drags on, your sense of time warps. Minutes stretch, steps blur together. You start counting them, then stop when the numbers feel meaningless. Someone cracks a joke about opening a beverage stall when this is over. It's not funny. You laugh anyway. This is your fourth light survival joke. And at this point it's mostly muscle memory. Finally, miraculously, there's water. Not much. Not clean by modern standards. But it's there. A shallow source. Shared carefully. Without celebration. This is how survival looks here. Relief without joy. You drink slowly, resisting the urge to overdo it. Ancient travelers knew better than to drink greedily after dehydration. Though knowing and doing are different things. Some historians still debate how often restraint succeeded. Watching the caravan, you'd guess, sometimes. That night, camp feels marginally safer. Marginally. You lie down exhausted, water close by, and let your body settle into something like equilibrium. You're still thirsty. You probably always will be. As sleep takes hold, one thought floats through, dry and clear. On the Silk Road, water doesn't just keep you alive. It decides how fast you die. You start noticing shapes that don't exist. At first, it's subtle. Movement at the edge of your vision. A dark line on the horizon that disappears when you stare directly at it. You tell yourself it's fatigue. Everyone does. On the Silk Road, imagination is one of the first things to dehydrate. Bandits enter the story before they enter reality. Historically, they were a constant threat along many Silk Road routes, especially in narrow passes and border regions where authority faded conveniently. What most people don't realize is that the fear of bandits did almost as much damage as bandits themselves. Caravans rerouted, rushed, or camped poorly based on rumors alone. Some historians still debate whether the perceived threat outweighed the actual attacks. Walking now with your shoulders tense and eyes scanning shadows. You'd say perception is doing plenty of harm on its own. Someone ahead points to a ridge. Just a gesture. Nothing confirmed. The caravan tightens instinctively. Conversation drops to whispers. Then to nothing at all. You adjust your grip on whatever you're carrying that could theoretically be used as a weapon. It wouldn't help. You know that. The gesture is symbolic. Like closing your laptop during turbulence. There's a strange, lesser-known fact about Silk Road banditry. Many so-called bandits were former soldiers or failed traders who knew the routes intimately. This isn't random violence. It's informed. That knowledge sits uncomfortably in your mind as you walk past rocky outcrops that feel designed for ambush. You imagine how easy it would be to disappear someone here without witnesses or paperwork. History is full of people who simply stop being mentioned. By midday, nothing has happened, and that's exhausting in its own way. Your nerves stay elevated, burning energy you can't afford to lose. Someone cracks a quiet joke about charging bandits rent for living in your head. You smile weakly. That's your fifth light survival joke. And it's doing a lot of emotional labor. A caravan leader quietly shifts the route, adding distance to avoid a narrow stretch. This is a known historical tactic, longer but safer paths chosen when danger was suspected. Some historians still debate whether detours saved lives or simply delayed the inevitable. Right now, you're grateful for the delay, even if it costs you another hour of walking. As evening approaches, relief creeps in alongside guilt. You're relieved nothing happened. You're guilty because you know it might just mean danger has chosen someone else today. Survival on the Silk Road often depended on luck wearing a very thin disguise. That night, camp is tighter, quieter, fires are kept low. You lie awake longer than usual, listening to every unfamiliar sound, heart jumping at perfectly normal noises. Sleep eventually wins, not because you feel safe, but because exhaustion always does. As you drift off, one thought hums steadily. The bandits didn't appear today, but they didn't need to. Fear walked with you the entire way, and it kept pace easily. Trading sounds civilized until you try doing it without trust, shared language, or a reliable legal system. The first trading stop arrives like a mirage that actually holds together when you blink. Stalls, tents, voices overlapping in accents you can't place. You feel a brief surge of relief, civilization. Finally, followed immediately by suspicion. Everyone here wants something, including you. That's the problem. Historically, Silk Road trade was built on layered exchanges rather than clean transactions. Goods passed through many hands, changing value with geography, demand, and rumor. What's rarely emphasized is how often trades were sealed without certainty. Weights varied, measures lied, promises stretched. Some historians still debate whether standardized coinage improved fairness or simply introduced new ways to cheat. Watching a merchant smile as he recalculates your worth, you suspect the latter. You present your goods carefully, pretending you're not desperate to lighten your load. The merchant examines them with theatrical boredom. He points out flaws you didn't know existed. You counter with confidence you don't feel. This dance is ancient. You recognize it from modern online marketplaces and suddenly miss the clarity of a return policy. Someone nearby jokes that at least here, the scams are face to face. You snort quietly. That's your sixth light survival joke. You're coping admirably. Language complicates everything. You rely on gestures, fragments of shared words, and the universal grammar of money changing hands. A misunderstanding nearly costs you a valuable item when you nod at the wrong moment. You recover. Barely. Your heart rate takes a while to come down. On the Silk Road, one misplaced gesture could mean profit or offense. Some historians still debate how traders managed complex negotiations across cultures so effectively. You suspect, effectively, meant, often badly. But with confidence. There's a lesser-known fact about Silk Road commerce that becomes painfully relevant. Reputation traveled faster than goods. Word of a dishonest trader could close doors ahead. Word of a gullible one could do the same. You're careful not to stand out in either direction. You aim for forgettable. Forgettable survives longer. By afternoon, you've traded something away and gained something else, lighter, smaller, theoretically more valuable. You don't feel richer. You feel exposed. Every exchange feels like shedding skin. The caravan regroups, counting heads, checking loads, quietly assessing who did well and who didn't. No one asks questions. Answers would invite judgment. As evening settles, you inventory your remaining goods and realize how thin your margin has become. One bad trade, one dishonest partner, one delay. That's all it would take. You lie down thinking about how modern shopping carts hide this anxiety behind checkout buttons. Sleep comes slowly. Trading didn't make you safer. It just reminded you how fragile your position really is. Tomorrow, the road keeps score. Food stops being comfort the moment it starts fighting back. You notice it during breakfast. If you can call it that, something dry, something oily, something you're not entirely convinced was meant for human digestion. You eat it anyway. On the Silk Road, hunger is persuasive, and your standards have already begun to erode. Historically, travelers ate whatever could survive the journey: dried meat, hard grains, fermented things whose origins were better left unexamined. What's rarely emphasized is how violently unfamiliar this diet could be. Your stomach, accustomed to predictability, is now an unwilling anthropologist. It studies every bite and files a complaint. Some historians still debate whether digestive illness was more deadly than injury along the route. Judging by the groans around you, it certainly wasn't rare. By mid-morning, someone is already regretting breakfast. Quietly, dignity is preserved as best it can be. The caravan doesn't stop for long, because stopping invites other problems. You learn to walk while mildly nauseous, which is a skill no one lists on resumes. You distract yourself by counting steps, then abandon that when the numbers start to feel accusatory. There's a strange, lesser-known fact about Silk Road food culture. Spices weren't just for flavor, they were sometimes used to mask spoilage. This information arrives in your mind far too late. Right as you swallow something that tastes aggressively optimistic. You pause, consider your life choices, and continue chewing. Someone nearby jokes that this builds immunity. You laugh weakly. That's your seventh light survival joke. And it's doing heroic work. At the next stop, you're offered something warm, soup, maybe, thick, murky, reassuringly hot. You hesitate for half a second. Then accept. Heat, at least, feels like safety. Ancient travelers often preferred hot food precisely because boiling reduced risk. Though, reduced, is a flexible term here. Some historians still debate how often food preparation actually prevented illness. Your stomach is about to contribute anecdotal evidence. The afternoon drags. Your energy dips unpredictably, spiking and crashing like a badly calibrated device. You feel fine, then suddenly very not fine. Then fine again. The road doesn't care. It keeps asking for steps. You provide them. Adaptation, once again, proves useful. By evening, the worst of it passes, for you. Not for everyone. Someone is quietly left behind to rest with a smaller group, hoping to rejoin later. No drama, no speeches. This is a known historical reality. Illness thinned caravans gradually. Not catastrophically. You don't ask questions. You don't look back. Both actions feel unkind and necessary. That night, you lie down with your stomach cautiously calm, as if waiting to see if you've learned your lesson. You think about modern food safety labels and feel a sudden, intense appreciation for them. Tomorrow's menu will be another surprise. You're already tired. As sleep edges in, one thought settles with uncomfortable clarity. On the Silk Road, food doesn't just nourish you, it tests you, and sometimes, it wins. You realize how alone you are when you try to ask a simple question and fail spectacularly. It's nothing dramatic, just asking how much farther to the next stop, but the words come out wrong. The gesture is misunderstood, and suddenly you've promised something you didn't mean to promise. You nod, smile, and walk away, hoping whatever you agreed to resolves itself. This is communication on the Silk Road, improvisation with consequences. Historically, the Silk Road wasn't one linguistic corridor but dozens layered on top of each other. Traders passed through regions where entirely different language families overlapped: Turkic, Persian, Sogdian, Chinese, and more. Interpreters existed, but not for everyone, and not all the time. What's rarely mentioned is how often misunderstandings shaped outcomes. Prices changed, tempers flared, deals collapsed. Some historians still debate how much trade relied on shared language versus shared expectations. Judging by your experience, expectations are doing most of the work, and failing often. As the day goes on, you start recognizing patterns instead of words. Tone replaces vocabulary. Body language becomes grammar. A raised eyebrow means no. A pause means maybe. Silence can mean danger or indifference. And distinguishing between the two is a learned skill. You get it wrong once and receive a look so cold it briefly lowers your body temperature. You apologize immediately, in a language that might not be correct but sounds sufficiently regretful. There's a strange, lesser-known fact about Silk Road communication. Many traders used hybrid jargon, simplified phrases mashed together from multiple languages. Think medieval travel slang, optimized for survival. You pick up a few words quickly. Not enough to be fluent, just enough to be dangerous. Some historians still debate whether this pidgin communication reduced conflict or created new kinds of it. Right now, it mostly creates stress. By midday, your head hurts more than your feet. Processing constant uncertainty is exhausting. Someone makes a joke about how silence is the most reliable language. You nod enthusiastically. That's your 8th light survival joke. And it lands better than expected. Laughter, it turns out, translates surprisingly well. In the afternoon, a misunderstanding almost turns serious. A gesture meant as thanks is interpreted as dismissal. Voices rise. People step closer. For a tense moment, you're acutely aware of how quickly things can escalate when no one fully understands anyone else. Then someone older intervenes, speaking calmly, firmly, in words you don't know but trust immediately. The moment dissolves. You exhale. Ancient travelers knew this dynamic well. Experienced mediators were often more valuable than guards. Some historians still debate how many conflicts ended this way. Quietly, without ever being recorded. That night, as you settle into camp, you replay the day's near misses. None of them involved weapons. All of them involved words, or the lack of them. You think about modern translation apps and feel a pang of longing that surprises you. As sleep finally comes, one thought drifts through your tired mind. On the Silk Road, misunderstanding isn't an inconvenience, it's a hazard, and tomorrow, you'll be navigating it again, one uncertain gesture at a time. Cities appear suddenly, like rewards you're not sure you earned. One moment it's dust and repetition. The next it's walls, noise, and the smell of too many people living too close together. You feel a rush of relief so strong it's almost embarrassing. Civilization. Finally. A place to rest, eat properly, maybe even feel human again. This feeling lasts about 10 minutes. Historically, Silk Road cities and oasis towns were vital hubs. Places like Kashgar or Samarkand where trade, culture, and information collided. They're remembered as jewels of the route, centers of wealth and learning. What's less emphasized is how efficiently they separated travelers from their money. Everything costs more here. Everything. Water, food, lodging, protection, information you didn't know you needed. Some historians still debate whether these cities exploited travelers or simply reflected supply and demand in extreme environments. Standing in a crowded market, lighter purse already in hand, you suspect the difference is mostly philosophical. You navigate narrow streets packed with voices, animals, carts, and smells that refuse to be categorized. Your senses are overwhelmed in a way that feels almost luxurious after weeks of monotony. You also realize how visible you are. In the open road, you were just another exhausted shape. Here, you are a customer, a potential mistake. Eyes follow you with professional interest. You pay for lodging that looks questionable but claims to be secure. The word secure is doing impressive work. You set your belongings down and immediately feel poorer. Not because you spent money, but because you now know how fast it disappears. Someone nearby jokes that cities are where merchants come to lose profit and gain stories. You smile. That's your ninth light survival joke. And it carries the weary confidence of experience. Food tastes better here, richer, spiced, dangerously satisfying. You eat more than you should because joy has been rationed for weeks. Ancient travelers often overindulged at stops like this. Despite knowing better, some historians still debate whether feast and famine cycles worsened overall health. Watching yourself reach for another bite, you'd say history has a point. By afternoon, the city's other talent reveals itself: distraction. You lose track of time, of people, of your own caution. This is when pickpockets thrive. Not because travelers are stupid, but because they're tired. You catch yourself patting your bag repeatedly, counting possessions like a nervous habit. Someone else isn't so lucky. There's shouting, a brief chase, no resolution. The crowd absorbs the event and moves on. Cities are excellent at that. As evening settles, prices rise subtly, rooms fill, supplies thin. You realize staying too long is almost as dangerous as leaving too soon. The Silk Road doesn't reward comfort, it punishes attachment. Some historians still debate optimal stop durations for caravans. You suspect optimal is whatever leaves before fatigue turns into carelessness. That night, lying in a real room with real walls, you expect deep rest. Instead, your mind races. Cities drain you differently than deserts. Not with force, but with choice. Tomorrow, you'll leave poorer, heavier, and strangely eager to return to the simplicity of the road. As sleep finally arrives, one truth settles in gently. The Silk Road's cities don't save you from the journey. They tax you for surviving it. You don't notice the sickness at first because it feels exactly like everything else. Fatigue, a dull ache, The vague sense that your body has stopped submitting useful feedback. On the Silk Road, discomfort is constant, so illness has to work harder to stand out. It does, slowly, patiently. By mid-morning, someone is coughing behind you. Not dramatically, just often enough to be unsettling. Another traveler rubs their eyes with the distracted urgency of someone trying not to think about what that might mean. Historically, disease traveled the Silk Road as efficiently as silk, spices, and ideas. In fact, it often moved faster. Trade routes don't just connect markets, they connect immune systems. Some historians still debate whether the Silk Road accelerated pandemics or merely revealed how interconnected the world already was. Walking now, surrounded by strangers from dozens of regions, you'd argue it did both. You feel it in your throat first, a dryness that water doesn't fix. Then a heaviness in your chest that makes breathing feel like work you didn't sign up for. You tell yourself it's dust. It's always dust. This is a comforting lie travelers have used for centuries. It rarely helps. There's a lesser-known historical reality about illness on the route. People didn't always recognize it as contagious. Germ theory is still far in the future. Symptoms are interpreted through imbalance, bad air, or divine inconvenience. You overhear someone blame the city's water. Someone else blames the desert spirits. No one blames proximity. You keep walking, partly because stopping would draw attention, and partly because you're not sure what stopping would solve. By midday, the caravan's mood shifts. Quiet deepens. People spread out slightly, instinctively creating space without acknowledging why. This is how humans behave when they know something is wrong but don't want to name it. You feel a flicker of modern frustration. Just isolate. Wash your hands. Rest, and then remember none of those concepts exist in a useful way here. Some historians still debate how effective ancient quarantine measures were. Right now, you'd settle for awareness. Someone jokes weakly that at least illness gives you an excuse to lie down. The joke lands flat. Still, you smile. That's your 10th light survival joke. And it's mostly for yourself. Humor, at this point, is a reflex. As the afternoon drags on, one traveler falls behind, not collapsed, just slower. Someone helps them walk. No one suggests leaving them yet is doing a lot of work in that sentence. The Silk Road was pragmatic to the point of cruelty when necessary. Sick travelers sometimes survived with care. Sometimes they didn't. Sometimes the caravan survived by not waiting to find out. Some historians still debate how often groups abandoned the ill. The records are vague. The silences are loud. You feel a headache bloom behind your eyes. Synchronized with your heartbeat, every sound feels sharper. Every step feels heavier. You drink water cautiously, aware that dehydration and illness are enthusiastic collaborators. Your body is now negotiating survival terms without consulting your optimism. As evening approaches, the caravan makes camp earlier than planned. This is framed as strategic. It might even be true. Fires are lit carefully. People sit farther apart than usual. Conversation is minimal. You wrap yourself tighter, both for warmth and for the illusion of protection. Ancient travelers often believed cold air worsened illness. Whether or not that was true, being warm feels like control. And control is scarce. That night, sleep is fractured. You drift, wake, drift again. Coughs puncture the darkness. Somewhere, someone vomits quietly and apologizes to no one. The stars look the same as they did before, which feels unfair. You think about how many historic journeys ended not with drama, but with fever and confusion. No ambush, no heroic last stand, just a body that quietly stops cooperating. As you lie there, sweating and shivering in turns, one thought becomes unavoidable. The Silk Road doesn't need to attack you. It just needs to introduce you to enough people. Tomorrow, you'll find out whether this sickness passes through you, or claims more than its share. You wake to a sound that feels personal, like the sky clearing its throat just for you. Wind, not a breeze. The kind that presses against your face and steals moisture without asking. The illness from yesterday hasn't vanished, it's simply quieter, lurking in your joints and behind your eyes, waiting to see how ambitious you plan to be. The Silk Road, apparently, has opinions about ambition. Weather turns hostile without warning out here. Historically, travelers along the Silk Road faced sudden sandstorms, freezing nights, and winds that could peel skin raw. Forecasting didn't exist in any useful way. You read the sky, the animals, the mood of the group, and hope your interpretation isn't expensive. Some historians still debate whether experienced guides truly predicted weather or merely recognized when it was already too late. Standing now with grit in your teeth, you suspect it's the latter. By mid-morning, the wind strengthens, sand lifts off the ground in thin sheets, stinging your ankles, then your calves. You wrap cloth around your mouth and nose, which helps until it doesn't. Breathing becomes work again. The caravan closes ranks, not out of solidarity but practicality. Losing sight of each other in this would be disastrous. You keep your eyes on the back ahead of you and try not to think about how easily you could disappear. There's a strange, lesser-known detail about Silk Road storms: sound collapses. Voices vanish a few steps away. Directions turn into guesses. You hear someone shout and realize you have no idea where it came from. Panic flickers, quick and sharp, then is forced back down. Panic wastes oxygen. You focus on moving your feet. Step, step, step. A camel balks. Another kneels. The caravan halts in confusion. The worst possible response to weather that punishes hesitation. People argue through muffled cloth, their words shredded by wind. Someone older takes charge, not by authority but by certainty. They signal, you follow. This is how leadership works here, not by title, but by being the least wrong at the right moment. Some historians still debate how often caravans survived storms through planning versus luck. Right now, luck is doing most of the heavy lifting. By afternoon, the storm peaks. Visibility shrinks to arm's length. You tuck your head and keep moving because stopping would mean getting buried in effort. Your eyes burn. Your throat burns. Everything burns. Honestly, someone cracks a hoarse joke about exfoliation. It's terrible. You laugh anyway. That's your 11th light survival joke. And it arrives purely on instinct. When the wind finally eases, it does so without apology. The world reappears in pieces. People check on each other without fuss. Supplies are counted. Losses are noted silently. This is another historical reality. Storms rarely killed everyone outright. They killed a little, damaged a lot, and left survivors to calculate what it cost. Some historians still debate how often storms caused indirect deaths days later through exposure and illness. You cough into your cloth and feel like you're part of the dataset. Camp is made early. Fires struggle. Food tastes like sand because it probably is. You eat anyway. Your body needs fuel even if it protests the menu. You notice how drained everyone looks, not just tired, but hollowed. Weather doesn't just hurt bodies, it erodes morale. And morale, out here, is a resource. As night falls, the temperature drops aggressively, as if the storm took the warmth with it out of spite. You shiver under layers that smell faintly of dust and sickness. Ancient travelers wrote about these temperature swings with an almost offended tone. Some historians still debate how people managed thermoregulation without modern gear. Judging by your teeth chattering, managed is generous. Sleep comes in fragments. Wind still whispers at the edges of camp, reminding you it could return if it felt like it. You drift in and out, aware of your breath, your heartbeat, the weight of the day. The illness hasn't left. The weather hasn't apologized. The road hasn't slowed. As your thoughts soften, one conclusion settles in gently but firmly: on the Silk Road, the weather isn't background, it's a participant. And today, it made its point. Tomorrow, it may decide to make another. Maps feel comforting in a way reality never is. You unfold one in the morning light, creased, annotated, confident. Lines promise progress. Symbols suggest certainty. Distances look reasonable. This is the lie you need today. So you accept it gratefully. Historically, maps along the Silk Road were less about precision and more about reassurance. They marked routes that had worked once, for someone, under conditions that may never exist again. Oases shifted, rivers changed their minds, entire paths vanished under sand. Some historians still debate whether travelers relied more on maps or on memory passed from guide to guide. Right now, the paper in your hands feels authoritative in a way people rarely do. You set out following a route that looks efficient. The ground disagrees. What the map calls a path is a suggestion at best, rutted here, swallowed there. You adjust, drift, correct. Every correction costs energy. Every decision adds friction. The sun climbs, and the map begins to feel like a motivational poster rather than a tool. By mid-morning, a disagreement breaks out. Two interpretations of the same line. One says keep left toward higher ground. The other says cut straight to save time. Both arguments sound reasonable. Neither can be proven. The caravan hesitates. And hesitation is expensive. Someone jokes that at least the map looks confident. You exhale a laugh. That's your 12th light survival joke. And it tastes like irony. There's a strange, lesser-known fact about Silk Road cartography. Some maps were intentionally vague to protect trade secrets. Routes were obscured on purpose. Knowledge was currency, and clarity was not free. You consider this as you squint at a symbol that could mean water nearby or good luck. Some historians still debate how often misinformation was deliberate versus accidental. The desert, you note, doesn't care about intent. You choose a direction because choosing feels better than arguing. The caravan follows. For a while, things seem fine. Then the ground softens unexpectedly, sucking at your steps. Progress slows. The map insists you're doing great. Your calves disagree. You think about modern navigation apps recalculating instantly and feel a pang of longing so sharp it's almost funny. By afternoon, it's clear the route is longer than advertised. Shade is scarce. Water math turns unfriendly again. No one blames the map out loud. Blame requires certainty, and certainty is in short supply. Some historians still debate whether ancient travelers developed better spatial intuition than we have today. Walking now, guided by optimism and regret, you suspect intuition had limits too. As evening approaches, a landmark finally appears. Rock formations matching the sketch on the map. Relief spreads quietly. The map wasn't lying, it was just optimistic. Camp forms with a tired efficiency that feels practiced. You sit, stretch, and think about how close you came to trusting paper over experience. That night, the map is folded carefully and put away. Not discarded. It still has value, just not the kind you thought. You fall asleep knowing this lesson will repeat. Because the Silk Road loves repetition. Maps don't guide you here. They negotiate with reality. And reality usually wins. The road becomes louder without raising its voice. You feel it before you hear it, a shift in symbols. In gestures. In the invisible rules governing who bows. Who speaks first. Who pretends not to notice whom. This is a crossroads, not just of goods but of beliefs. And you are walking straight through it with the spiritual equivalent of tourist shoes. Historically, the Silk Road carried religions the way it carried silk and spice, folded. Repackaged. Exchange. Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, Christianity, Islam. Local cults you've never heard of and won't fully understand even after hearing them explained twice. What's less emphasized is how intimate these encounters were. Faith wasn't an abstract debate here, it dictated diet, rest days, trade partners, and trust. Some historians still debate whether religion unified the route or fractured it into polite segments. Watching people adjust their behavior with careful awareness, you suspect it did both at once. By mid-morning, you're invited, politely, insistently, to observe a ritual. You don't know the rules. You don't know the expectations. You know declining might offend. And participating incorrectly might do the same. You choose the safest option, respectful stillness. You stand where indicated, mimic the posture of someone who looks confident, and hope imitation counts as understanding. Someone later tells you that staying quiet was the right move. You thank them like they just saved your life. They might have. There's a strange, lesser-known detail about Silk Road faith exchanges. Syncretism thrived. People blended beliefs pragmatically. This prayer for travel. That charm for health. A ritual borrowed for luck. Survival encouraged flexibility. You notice amulets hanging beside trade goods. Prayers whispered before negotiations. Small gestures performed before dangerous stretches. Some historians still debate whether this diluted doctrine or strengthened it. From where you're standing, it strengthens morale, which seems more immediately useful. Tension hums at the edges. A comment lands wrong, a joke doesn't translate, you feel the air tighten. Then loosen as someone older redirects the moment with practiced calm. Conflict here rarely explodes, it simmers. Redirected into etiquette, you learn to watch faces closely. To sense when curiosity turns into discomfort. Modern debates feel louder by comparison. Here, Offense is quieter and more consequential. By afternoon, you're exhausted from awareness alone. Every action carries double meaning. Where you sit, what you eat, when you move. You think about how easy it is to offend without intent and how hard it is to apologize across belief systems. Someone makes a gentle joke about collecting gods like souvenirs. It's risky. It lands. Somehow. You exhale. That's your 13th light survival joke. And it survived inspection. As evening comes, the caravan adjusts plans around a holy day you didn't know existed. Travel pauses. Trade shifts. You accept it without complaint. Resistance here would mark you as difficult. And difficulty travels faster than reputation repairs. Some historians still debate how often religious calendars reshaped Silk Road schedules. Tonight, the answer feels like often enough to matter. You lie down listening to unfamiliar prayers drift through the dark. Not threatening, just present. The stars look the same. The ground feels the same. The meanings layered over both are what changed. As sleep settles in, one understanding rests with you. Calm and clear. On the Silk Road. Belief isn't background noise. It's part of the terrain. And you survive it the same way you survive deserts and storms, by paying attention and moving carefully. Tomorrow, the road will test a different part of you. You wake up to the unsettling realization that the rules have changed again. And no one bothered to notify you. Yesterday, this stretch of road belonged to one authority. Today, it belongs to another. The border wasn't marked by a wall or a dramatic gate, just a subtle shift in uniforms, accents, and the way people suddenly care a lot more about paperwork you don't have. Historically, political boundaries along the Silk Road were fluid in the most inconvenient way possible. Empires rose, fractured, and reassembled faster than news could travel. A city that welcomed you last year might tax you this year or imprison you next. What's less commonly discussed is how often travelers learned about regime change by being stopped and questioned mid-journey. Some historians still debate whether merchants tracked politics closely or simply reacted when it became unavoidable. Right now, it feels unavoidable. You're halted by officials who look tired rather than threatening. Which is somehow worse. They ask questions that sound familiar but require answers framed differently than before. Who do you trade with? Where did you come from? Where are you going? The same questions. New implications. You answer carefully, aware that honesty and accuracy are no longer the same thing. A wrong word here doesn't start an argument, it starts paperwork. There's a strange, lesser-known fact about Silk Road borders. Many were defined more by taxation rights than geography. If someone could collect from you, the land was theirs. You discover this when a fee is demanded that no one mentioned yesterday. It's not optional. It's not negotiable. It's framed as routine. Some historians still debate whether heavy taxation slowed Silk Road trade or simply ensured only the most resilient merchants survived. Standing here, lighter in coin and patience, you suspect resilience was the point. The caravan absorbs the delay with practiced resignation. This happens often enough that frustration has been streamlined. Someone jokes that borders are just toll booths with opinions. You snort before you can stop yourself. That's your 14th light survival joke. And it earns a few tired smiles. Humor, it turns out, crosses borders more easily than goods. By afternoon, You're allowed through. Horror but intact. The landscape hasn't changed, but the tension has. You're more cautious now, watching not just the road but the people who claim authority over it. Politics here isn't debated, it's enforced. Temporarily. Until someone else enforces something different. As evening falls, you think about how modern travelers complain about visas and customs lines. You almost miss them. At least they come with signs and explanations. Here, power shifts quietly, and you're expected to adjust without complaint. You lie down that night feeling the weight of something heavier than fatigue. Uncertainty backed by force. The Silk Road isn't just dangerous because of nature or distance. It's dangerous because human control is temporary. And you're always arriving slightly out of date. Tomorrow, the road will demand payment again, if not in money, then in something harder to replace. You start to recognize the sound before you see it, the scrape of wheels, the clink of metal, the cough of guards who have been standing too long. Gates. Every city, every fortified stop, every ambitious checkpoint has one. And every gate has a hand outstretched. Sometimes politely, sometimes not. Taxes along the Silk Road were not a side effect, they were a feature. Historically, rulers funded armies, walls, and egos by taxing goods that passed through their territory. Silk, spices, gems, everything was assessed, reassessed, and occasionally assessed again just to be sure. What's less often discussed is how unpredictable these taxes were. Rates changed with mood, season, and rumor. Some historians still debate whether taxation was standardized at all or mostly improvised. Watching an official squint at your pack, you're leaning toward improvised. You wait in line, rehearsing explanations you may not be allowed to finish. The official pokes at your goods with professional disinterest, then asks a question you don't fully understand. You answer anyway, smiling in a way you hope reads as cooperative rather than confused. Confusion is suspicious. Cooperation is expensive. You choose expensive. There's a strange, lesser-known fact about Silk Road tolls. Sometimes you were taxed simply for existing. Head taxes, road fees, security contributions that did not, in fact, include security. You pay one such fee now and receive nothing in return, not even a receipt. The lack of documentation is the point. Some historians still debate whether travelers factored bribes into their budgets intentionally. Judging by how smoothly this exchange happens, many did. By midday, you've passed through 3 checkpoints that all claim jurisdiction over the same stretch of road. No one argues with the overlap. Arguing would imply a shared legal framework, which does not exist. The caravan absorbs the losses quietly, recalculating margins that were already thin. Someone mutters that at this rate, you'll be trading memories instead of goods. You laugh softly. That's your 15th light survival joke. And it's dangerously close to truth. As the afternoon wears on, the psychological toll catches up. You're not just tired, you're drained of momentum. Every stop fractures your sense of progress. You walk again, but with less conviction. Ancient travelers wrote about this feeling indirectly, framing it as spiritual fatigue or loss of fortune. Some historians still debate whether prolonged taxation discouraged long-distance trade. Walking now, you can confirm it discourages joy. By evening, camp feels quieter than usual. People speak less. Counting replaces conversation. You inventory what you have left and realize how many decisions have been made for you by men you'll never see again. Power here is brief but costly. As you lie down, the road feels heavier than it did this morning. Not longer, just more expensive. You close your eyes knowing that tomorrow there will be another gate, another fee, another polite theft framed as order. On the Silk Road, passage is never free. You just don't always know the price until it's already been paid. You stop pretending the animals are your partners and accept what they really are: equipment with opinions. The horses snort, the camels groan, and every beast of burden on this route has made it very clear that your survival ranks somewhere below their comfort. You respect that, because respect is cheaper than resentment and far more effective. Historically, animals were the true engines of Silk Road travel. Without them, trade collapsed. What's less often mentioned is how frequently they failed: lameness, exhaustion, illness, simple refusal. When an animal stopped working, it wasn't a tragedy, it was an accounting problem. Some historians still debate how often caravans replaced animals mid-journey versus abandoning goods to keep them alive. Judging by the sharp looks exchanged when a camel slows, priorities are clear. Mid-morning, one of the pack animals stumbles. Not dramatically, no cinematic collapse, just a hesitation that lasts a little too long. The caravan slows. People gather, voices low. You watch as straps are loosened, loads redistributed, calculations made. No one pets the animal. No one comforts it. Compassion exists here, but it's practical and brief. The road doesn't pause for sentiment. There's a strange, lesser-known fact about Silk Road logistics. Animals often carried more value than the goods they transported. Losing a camel could end a journey faster than losing silk. You absorb this quietly, because it explains a lot about the way humans are suddenly less important when resources thin. Some historians still debate whether animal welfare was a concern or merely a strategy. Watching the group debate whether to push on or cut losses, you suspect strategy wins. By afternoon, the decision is made. The animal stays behind with minimal supplies and one handler who drew the short straw, or volunteered. Depending on how you interpret silence. No ceremony, no goodbyes. You look away as the caravan moves on. Because looking would force you to imagine being in that position yourself. On the Silk Road, empathy is rationed for survival. The heat returns, familiar and unwelcome. Walking feels heavier now, partly because the animals ahead of you are tired, and partly because you are. Someone makes a tired joke about modern delivery services having it easy. You manage a breathy laugh. That's your 16th light survival joke. And it's running on fumes. As evening approaches, the absence left by the lost animal becomes noticeable. Fewer supplies, less redundancy. Everyone knows it, no one says it. This is how fragility spreads, not through panic, but through math. You lie down that night closer to the remaining animals than before, aware that your fate is now even more tightly bound to theirs. As sleep creeps in, one thought settles quietly but firmly: on the Silk Road, animals are not companions, they are deadlines with legs. And every step they take buys you a little more time. Crowds don't guarantee company. You learn that today, surrounded by people and yet oddly unmoored. The caravan is larger now, merged briefly with another group heading in the same direction. But the closeness doesn't bring comfort. It sharpens the sense of being unknown. Names blur. Faces pass without sticking. You could vanish into this mass. And it would take hours for anyone to notice. Maybe days. Historically, the Silk Road was crowded at key nodes, markets, border towns, river crossings, yet loneliness was a common theme in travelers' accounts. Constant movement prevented deep bonds. Trust took time, time was expensive. Some historians still debate whether caravans fostered community or simply tolerated proximity. Standing shoulder to shoulder with strangers who don't ask your name, you suspect tolerance did most of the work. By mid-morning, the noise is relentless. Languages overlap, animals jostle, tempers flare briefly, then settle. You miss the quiet of the open road in a way that surprises you. Solitude was simpler. Here, you must track more people, more intentions, more risks. Someone bumps you and doesn't apologize, not out of rudeness, but because apologies require shared expectations. You adjust and move on. Adaptation. Again. There's a strange, lesser-known reality about large caravans. They attracted both safety and danger. More people meant more protection, but also more attention. Bandits noticed. Officials noticed. Diseases noticed. Some historians still debate the optimal caravan size for survival. Walking now, hemmed in by bodies and noise. You think the answer changes daily. You try to strike up a conversation during a brief stop. It stalls quickly, not unkindly. The other traveler is polite, distant, conserving energy for threats that matter more than friendliness. You recognize the strategy because you've been using it too. Loneliness here isn't emotional neglect, it's risk management. In the afternoon, you witness a quiet argument dissolve into nothing. Two people disagree, then realize resolving it isn't worth the effort. They separate, and the crowd absorbs the space between them. This happens repeatedly. Conflict here rarely escalates. It evaporates. You think about how modern life amplifies disagreement instead. Someone jokes that at least no one here can subtweet you. You smile. That's your 17th light survival joke. And it earns a brief chuckle from someone you'll never see again. As evening approaches, the caravan thins again as routes diverge. Goodbyes are minimal. No promises to keep in touch. You watch familiar backs recede and feel an unexpected pang, not of loss, but of continuity interrupted. On the Silk Road, people are temporary landmarks. That night, you lie down among strangers who will also be gone soon. The stars feel distant. The fire feels small. You breathe slowly, grounding yourself in the one constant you have: movement. As sleep settles, one truth drifts in gently. You can be surrounded and still be alone. And on the Silk Road, that's not a failure. It's normal. Winter doesn't arrive all at once. It sneaks in through the margins, cooler mornings, longer shadows, breath that lingers a second too long in the air. You notice it when your hands feel stiff before you've even started walking. The Silk Road is very good at waiting until you're tired before changing the rules. Historically, winter was one of the most dangerous seasons for Silk Road travelers, especially across mountain passes and high plateaus. Snow closed routes. Ice turned paths into traps. What's less commonly mentioned is how unprepared many caravans were for cold after weeks of heat. Bodies adapted slowly. Supplies adapted poorly. Some historians still debate whether winter killed more travelers than bandits or disease. Standing here, rubbing warmth back into your fingers, you suspect it was a close competition. By mid-morning, the cold settles into your bones. Layers help, but only briefly. The wind slices through seams like it's been waiting for them. You walk faster, not to arrive sooner, but to stay warm. This burns energy you don't have much of. Ancient travelers wrote about this dilemma: move to survive the cold, or rest to survive exhaustion. Some historians still debate which strategy worked better. Right now, you're trying both and succeeding at neither. There's a strange, lesser-known detail about Silk Road winters. Water becomes harder to use. Containers freeze. Snow lies to you about how much moisture it provides. You break ice to drink and regret it immediately as your teeth protest. Someone jokes that at least you don't have to worry about food spoiling. You snort softly. That's your 18th light survival joke. And it sounds like it might freeze mid-air. By afternoon, the caravan slows. Animals struggle. Hooves slip. Every step requires attention. You fall once, not badly. Just enough to shock the breath out of you. Two people help you up without comment. This is kindness here. Fast. Silent. Efficient. You thank them anyway. They nod and move on. The sky darkens early, as winter skies like to do. Camp is made sooner than planned. But warmth is scarce. Fires are small. Fuel limited. You huddle closer than before, aware that proximity now means survival rather than inconvenience. Historically, hypothermia claimed travelers quietly, often mistaken for fatigue. Some historians still debate how often deaths were misattributed. You pull your clothes tighter and refuse to sit too still. That night, sleep is shallow and restless. The cold demands attention. Your thoughts slow, sharpen, then slow again. You focus on breathing, on small movements, on staying aware. The road feels different now, harder, sharper, less forgiving. You miss the heat, which feels absurd given how much you complained about it. As your eyes finally close, one realization settles in with icy clarity. The Silk Road doesn't care which season you prefer. It will test you in all of them. And winter has only just begun. The promise that brought you here starts to thin. Like a story repeated too often. You remember why you set out: profit, adventure, maybe the quiet hope of returning transformed in a way people would admire. That version of the future feels distant now, muffled by cold air and routine exhaustion. The Silk Road has a talent for stretching dreams until they become unrecognizable. Historically, many travelers underestimated how slowly wealth accumulated along this route. Goods passed through countless hands, each taking a cut. Delays ate profits. Losses compounded quietly. What's less often discussed is how many merchants realized, halfway through, that the math no longer worked, but continued anyway because turning back felt worse. Some historians still debate whether optimism or sunk cost thinking kept caravans moving. Walking now with sore legs and lighter bags. You suspect it was both. Working together. By mid-morning, you overhear a discussion about prices ahead. Lower demand, higher tolls, riskier stretches. None of this is framed dramatically. It's delivered like a weather report, unfortunate, but expected. You adjust your expectations downward again. A habit that's becoming second nature. Ambition here doesn't shatter, it erodes. There's a strange, lesser-known fact about Silk Road trade psychology. Success stories traveled farther than failures. For every merchant who returned wealthy, dozens returned quietly changed, or not at all. You think about how history prefers the outliers. Some historians still debate whether the route was truly as profitable as legend suggests, or if legend simply had better marketing. Right now, marketing is losing. In the afternoon, you calculate, again, what you could sell, what you should keep, what's no longer worth protecting. This mental accounting never stops. Someone jokes that by the time you get rich, you won't have the energy to enjoy it. You huff a laugh. That's your 19th light survival joke. And it lands with tired nods. Everyone here knows exactly what it means. As evening approaches, you feel something unexpected. Relief at the idea of not becoming wealthy. Wealth would require risk. Risk requires energy. Energy is in short supply. Survival has quietly replaced success as the goal. And you didn't even notice when the switch happened. Ancient travelers wrote about this shift obliquely, describing contentment with enough. Some historians still debate whether this was wisdom or resignation. Lying here, it feels like adaptation. You settle into camp with fewer plans than before. Fewer calculations. You still care, but differently. The road has taught you to value continuity over triumph. Tomorrow will come, and that's worth more than imagined riches. As sleep finds you, one thought drifts through, calm and unadorned. The Silk Road doesn't promise reward. It offers endurance, and endurance is a currency that never makes anyone famous. Turning back sounds logical until you imagine doing it. The road behind you isn't empty, it's full of everything you already survived. Deserts that remember you, gates that already charged you once and would happily do it again. People who now know what you're carrying and how tired you look. The Silk Road has a cruel sense of humor like that. Retreat is never a reset. Historically, returning was often more dangerous than continuing. Supplies were calibrated for forward motion, not reversal. Alliances had shifted. Seasons had changed. What was passable weeks ago might now be lethal. Some historians still debate how many travelers died attempting to go back rather than push on. Walking now, staring at a horizon that refuses to look welcoming in either direction. You understand why so many chose the devil they hadn't met yet. By mid-morning, the idea of return becomes a quiet argument inside your head. You list reasons, familiar ground, known risks. Then you list the counterpoints, taxes paid twice, favors used up, luck already spent. The caravan doesn't discuss it openly. This decision is private, because regret travels faster than consensus. You keep walking, not because you're convinced, but because stopping would force you to decide. There's a strange, lesser-known reality about Silk Road psychology. Momentum mattered more than morale. People kept moving because movement created the illusion of progress. And progress felt safer than reflection. Some historians still debate whether this mindset saved lives or just postponed despair. Right now, postponement feels like mercy. In the afternoon, you meet a small group heading the opposite way. They look older, not in years, but in posture. Their clothes are patched differently. Their expressions are wary but calm. Like people who've already done the math and accepted it. You exchange brief words, They don't discourage you. They don't encourage you. That neutrality feels heavier than advice. Someone in your caravan jokes that turning back is just doing the hard part twice. You smile faintly. That's your 20th light survival joke. And it lands with a shared exhale. Everyone understands it without explanation. As evening approaches, the argument inside you fades, not because it's resolved, but because fatigue has overridden it. You realize something important. The Silk Road doesn't trap you with walls. It traps you with exhaustion. By the time you're tired enough to consider turning back, you're too tired to do it. You lie down that night facing forward by default. The stars look the same in every direction, which feels oddly appropriate. You close your eyes knowing the decision has already been made, not by courage or hope, but by practicality. Tomorrow, you'll keep going, not because it's safer, because it's simpler. You hear the stories before you meet the people. They drift through camps and trading stops like smoke, softened by distance. Polished by repetition, someone made it rich. Someone crossed faster than expected. Someone survived a winter that supposedly kills everyone. These stories arrive hopeful and leave misleading fingerprints all over your expectations. Historically, the Silk Road produced legends far more efficiently than prophets. Successful merchants were remembered, repeated, exaggerated. Failures dissolved quietly into geography. What's less often acknowledged is how intentional this imbalance was. Hope kept caravans moving. Silence kept the road from looking as lethal as it actually was. Some historians still debate whether success stories were consciously amplified or simply more pleasant to retell. Either way, they outlived the truth. By mid-morning, you meet someone who embodies those stories, or at least claims to. He speaks confidently, gestures broadly, and describes past journeys with a practiced rhythm. His clothes suggest survival rather than comfort. His eyes suggest editing. You listen carefully, aware that every detail might be true, exaggerated, or strategically incomplete. On the Silk Road, experience is currency, and inflation is rampant. There's a strange, lesser-known fact about travel narratives along the route. Many were reshaped deliberately to protect trade advantages. Routes were shortened in retelling, dangers minimized, timing adjusted. You consider this as the storyteller describes a desert crossing that sounds suspiciously efficient. Some historians still debate how much of Silk Road lore was aspirational rather than factual. Watching heads nod around you, you'd say aspiration does a lot of the heavy lifting. In the afternoon, you catch yourself doing something dangerous, comparing your journey to theirs. Measuring your progress against a story designed to impress. This is how discouragement sneaks in. Someone jokes that history only remembers the people who didn't complain. You chuckle. That's your 21st light survival joke. And it lands because everyone here has complained privately. As evening comes, the storyteller moves on, leaving behind a faint wake of motivation and doubt. You sit with both, weighing them. Stories are useful, you realize, but only if you treat them like maps, guides, not guarantees. The road doesn't repeat itself just because someone says it did. That night, you fall asleep thinking about all the journeys that sounded easier in retrospect. History has a way of smoothing edges. The Silk Road keeps them sharp. Tomorrow, the gap between story and reality will narrow again. Whether you're ready or not, you meet the survivors eventually. Not all at once, and not in a way that feels cinematic. They don't arrive with fanfare or lessons neatly packaged. They're already there, sitting quietly at the edge of camps, moving carefully, conserving everything. When you finally recognize them, it's because they don't look comfortable. Historically, people who survived long Silk Road journeys were often described with admiration: resilient, hardened, wise. What's less discussed is how visibly altered they were. Weight lost and never fully regained. Movements economical to the point of caution. Humor used sparingly, like a resource that might run out. Some historians still debate whether these changes were temporary or permanent. Watching a man stretch a sore leg that never quite healed, you suspect permanent wins more often than anyone likes to admit. By mid-morning, you're walking beside one of them for a while. Conversation is minimal. When he does speak, it's practical. Don't rush water. Don't argue with guards. Don't trust clear skies. There's no drama in his voice. Just experience, flattened into instruction. You nod, absorbing it like you wish you'd absorbed advice weeks ago. There's a strange, lesser-known truth about Silk Road survival. Those who made it didn't romanticize the journey afterward. They talked about what worked, not what felt meaningful. They remembered logistics more clearly than landscapes. You realize this is why their stories sound dull compared to legends. Dull stories don't sell dreams. They sell reality. Some historians still debate why first-hand accounts often feel emotionally muted. Walking now with sore joints and steady breath. You understand, feeling too much didn't help them live. In the afternoon, you watch a survivor quietly refuse an unnecessary detour suggested by someone newer. No argument, just a shake of the head and a simple, "not worth it." The group listens. Experience has gravity here. You file the phrase away. Not worth it. It applies to more than routes. Someone cracks a joke about how survival ruins your posture and your expectations. The survivor smiles, small, tired, genuine. You join in. That's your 20-second light survival joke. And it lands softly, like it wasn't meant to travel far. As evening settles, you look at your own reflection in a dull metal surface and barely recognize it. You look older, not dramatically, just compressed. Like a version of you that's been edited for efficiency. You wonder if this is what survival looks like, not victory, but reduction. When you lie down that night, you don't dream of arrival anymore. You dream of continuity, waking up, walking, eating, resting, repeating. It's not inspiring, but it's real. And somewhere between one breath and the next, you understand something clearly and without panic. Surviving the Silk Road doesn't make you triumphant. It makes you different, and different is something you'll carry long after the road lets you go. You don't notice the moment history stops paying attention to you. There's no marker on the ground, no official record stamped and filed. You're just not remarkable anymore. You're another traveler among thousands who passed through this stretch of land. Left footprints, then stopped leaving anything at all. Historically, most people who traveled the Silk Road vanished from the record completely. We remember silk, spices, empires, but not the individuals who carried them. Names dissolve. Faces blur. What's left are roots and outcomes, not lives. Some historians still debate whether this absence reflects indifference or simple impossibility. There were too many of you, spread across too much distance, Over too much time, memory couldn't keep up. By now, you understand why. Survival here doesn't produce a clean ending. There's no triumphant return guaranteed. No tidy lesson waiting at the finish. Even if you make it home, you'll arrive quieter, thinner, less impressed by comfort and less capable of explaining why. People will ask how it was. You'll say, long. That will be the most accurate answer you have. There's a strange, lesser-known truth about Silk Road journeys. Even successful travelers often felt anticlimax at the end. After so much endurance, arrival felt unreal. Some historians still debate whether this emotional flattening was exhaustion or adaptation. Lying here now, listening to the familiar sounds of camp settling, you suspect it's both. And now, the pace finally slows. The road doesn't demand anything tonight. No calculations. No vigilance. No adjustment. Just breathing. Your body, so alert for so long, begins to loosen its grip. Muscles release. Thoughts stretch out. Longer. Softer. The wind sounds less like a warning and more like a lullaby made of distance. You remember fragments, the camels, the dust, the cold, the jokes you made just to keep moving. They blur gently, like lantern light fading at the edge of vision. You did not conquer the Silk Road. You did not master it. You endured it. And that was never guaranteed. So now, let the road drift away. Let the maps fold themselves. Let the stories keep the exaggerations, you don't need them. All you need now is rest. Slow breath in. Slower breath out. The journey softens. The edges dim. The road finally lets you sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.